big week for Man United, Joe. You happy, Man United fan?
Absolutely. He's in the building.
Rúben Amorim is in the building, joining up with the club, officially ahead of their first game against Ipswich Town, isn't it, next weekend? Lots of chat about the kind of players he'll bring in. You're excited, aren't you?
I'm very excited. Yeah. I'm always positive, man. I'm always positive.
I can tell.
I'm too optimistic. I'm too optimistic.
But the whiteboard is out.
Yeah.
So what's the plan,
This
mate?
is hilarious, actually, because Lyes was on the last time we did this, which was 5 signings Ineos should make. Now we're doing 5 signings Rúben Amorim could
we'll do a 1-year anniversary every year.
Yeah.
Because it does appear like he's going to have to make some changes if he wants to play the back 3, potentially shifting to wing backs. So we want to see which players you think could well fit in well under him.
Yeah. And the key thing is a lot of people talk about changing the system, as you alluded to, so what players he'd bring in to pick that system. So we tasked you with the 5 players Man United must sign.
Let me say, the real task was only choosing 5 players. I think that was the hardest thing about this entire thing.
Okay.
And Neve is going to be critiquing your picks.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a football expert, as we know. So Neve, get your...
Who's first?
Who's first?
Before I start, I just want to kind of allude to a report that came out recently that Amorim, when speaking to Man United, identified intensity as a massive thing that needed to improve in the squad. And I completely agree. And I think all 5 of my players, in terms of physicality, age, I think they match the same kind of profile that they should be kind of going for.
Okay.
To start, I think Man United miss a left-sided option, whether it's a left back in a 4 or a left-sided player in a 5. I think Luke Shaw's fitness has proven now to be unreliable, and United really need to look for an option there. Malacia as well, too, only recently came back. I've gone for Milos Kerkez from Bournemouth. Young left back at Bournemouth. I think this season has been absolutely flying. Had 2 assists the other day against Manchester City. But I just look at the athleticism and the aggression in which he kind of bombards that entire left-hand side. And I look in a 5. For me, the most important positions in Amorim's system are the 2 wide players, because just off watching them a few games, the fluidity in which they kind of transition from a 3 to a 5 back to a 3. It's seamless. You require crazy athleticism, crazy endurance, but also a real understanding of the system. And I think Kerkez, that's a guy that could really kind of adopt that role for Amorim.
Yeah, good player.
Even
He's 21 years of age as well.
Yeah, picking a Bournemouth player when you want intensity doesn't feel like a wrong thing to do, because Andoni Iraola, I think he's really prioritised that at Bournemouth. I thought Anthony Robinson could be a good another shout as that, but like you say, you want intensity there.
Yeah, best pressers in the league, really, Bournemouth, aren't they, outside of you know, some of the traditional top 6. So
That's a good shout, actually.
it's a really interesting shout.
Play.
Yeah.
Let's go with your number 4 then. So another player that
Yeah. So
Aaron should bring in.
I think I look at that midfield, and there's going to be some big outgoings in the summer. I think Casemiro, I would assume, is probably on the way out. Eriksen, I wouldn't see him long-term as a solution. However, when I look at Eriksen, it's a bit frustrating because I think Man United play their best football on the ball when he's there. I think you look at the goal that Garnacho scored against Leicester at the weekend, and yes, Bruno has the assist. Garnacho has a brilliant curling effort, but that whole play kind of originates from that reverse pass that Eriksen can kind of find.
Unbelievable.
And I think he's one of the few players at the club that actually has that eye for a pass, that has that appreciation to slow things down.
He's always had that.
Yeah, a brilliant player. And I always look at Man United and say, wow, I just wish we could have an Eriksen that had more legs, because I think at this current state of his body, he really can't compete week in, week out in the Premier League. Yeah. I look at a guy in Angelo Stiller at Stuttgart, and I think his whole passing array and the calmness and the consistency that he kind of plays from those deeper roles in midfield is something that United really haven't prioritized. I look at the midfielders United typically tend to bring in or even kind of bring through from the academy, and they're intense, they like to win their duels, but none of them really have a calming presence of just getting on the ball and getting things started from deep, and I think he'd be a real asset for us. Yeah,
it seems like a lot of people are talking about Stiller. He is destined for a big move. 92% success rate for passing success rate, still only 23 years of age. Can you see that happening?
I think Lyes is totally right in that Manchester United teams have either or of an engine or someone who's good in tight spaces and can make passes, whereas with Stiller you could have both. I thought maybe Tijani Reinders as well as another option for that. He can provide both, but I don't know whether or not United could lure him in.
I do like Reinders,
he's
tough to get Stiller out of Stuttgart as well, especially with those former Bayern Munich connections.
Yeah,
smell of like
they do have a
Bayern return.
They have a monopoly on the league, I hear it, but yeah, I think the Bundesliga the last few years has really shown that if you scout correctly, they got some big assets over there.
Yep, okay, let's go to the next one. In number 3.
He is your number 3.
The informed man in Europe.
I've gone a little optimistic with this one, right? I think it would take big money to pry him away from Frankfurt, but I look at those 2 number 10 roles that Amorim tends to deploy in his 3 at the back system, And Marmoush has been absolutely phenomenal this season. I've absolutely fell in love watching that front two of himself and Ekitike at Frankfurt. I think they're such a throwback. They're so fun to watch. And I think him in particular, top scorer in the Bundesliga.
Joint top Bundesliga score with Harry Kane, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than just his goals, his dynamism, his link-up play.
So if he starts for United, what would the attacking line look like? How would he fit in?
For me, I would like to see him in one of those two areas behind the striker. And at the moment, it is the most congested area at Manchester United because you have Mount, you have Bruno, you have Ahmad, you have Garnacho. Rashford potentially can play in there as well too. Antony, does he still have a future at the club? However, I look at United and goals has been a massive issue for this team. So although we have a lot of options, are any of the options surefire good enough? I think, where does he fit? I would play him. And at the current moment, you'd have to assume Bruno Fernandes fits into any team that United wants to play. However, Bruno, for me, brilliant creator. But in terms of carrying the ball, and I think that's not really his side of the game. I look at this guy in terms of a guy who can carry the ball, bring attacks forward, and then link up and score goals. I think it'd be a decent partnership.
Yeah. Any other shouts that you'd have, Neve, in that sort of area? Or do you think that...
Or do you think you should prioritise another position, potentially?
Yeah, potentially prioritise other positions. I really like Semenyo at Bournemouth. Sorry, not Bournemouth. Yeah, Bournemouth.
Semenyo,
it's that option there is someone who's on the right-hand side, where I feel like they could come into the United team straight away and potentially have an impact.
I hear it.
Semenyo's a good shout, actually.
He's a good player.
Only Haaland's had more shots in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Semenyo this season have a really solid season.
And to be honest, people will sniff at these
Apologies
players.
to Bournemouth fans, obviously, watching this.
No, but if anything, it's a compliment. I think they won't take it as a compliment, but the fact that Bournemouth have players that Man United fans are looking at and saying, wow, they would massively improve our team. Speaks to the fact that Man United haven't been great the last few years, but also shows the quality that's kind of coming through at that club.
Yeah, they've been great. Bournemouth's joint top scorer equal with Evan Nilsson, I believe, as well. So he's having a top season. Let's go to your second pick.
This is the most optimistic of the bunch, but again, you talk about a player that I fell in love with this season, Baleba. Oh my God! Do you guys see his cameo against Manchester City?
Ridiculous.
So good.
Brighton, right? I think that's the club nowadays that if you really want to go sign a player that is on the cusp of kind of just breaking out, you go to them. And I look at the last few seasons.
Sign them before they go to Brighton.
1,000%.
I think that's what Ineos are going to try.
We're not all confident enough, apparently, but I just look at the midfield players that have kind of burst through at Brighton the last few seasons. Bissouma, Caicedo. You said you like your hot takes on this. I genuinely think Baleba could be the best of the lot. Obviously not at the current moment, but what he could end up becoming, I think he has everything.
He's only 20 years of age as well.
But you just look at everything in his game, his height, his ability to carry the ball. He's one of the best ball carriers.
Comfortable on the ball.
Yeah, he's one of the best ball carriers, best ball drivers in the entire league. Progressive passing as well, too. He leads so many categories in that respect. I just think he's dominant. And I look at Man United's midfield. We haven't had a real guy in there who can kind of just take control of games in that midfield engine room for years now. And look, 20 years old, this is my midfield imagination at United now. Eriksen and Casemiro kind of leave. In that engine room, you got Baleba, you got Stiller, you got Kobbie Mainoo, you have Manuel Ugarte. Those are 4 options right there that are all quite different. They can all play together, and it gives you options. It's a young midfield as well, too.
What do you think, Neve?
How much would he?
If Caicedo went for 115. Yeah, you're looking at similar, but this is fairy tale land, I guess.
It is fairy tale land, and you talk about on the ball, off the ball as well, though.
Oh yeah, second best interceptions per 90.
I forgot to mention that as well too.
Made 5 Premier League
against Manchester City. He bossed that game.
Yeah,
Boston.
Amazing off the ball. So number one, then, is it the obvious name?
Look, I was telling you, I really wanted to go somewhere else in this direction just so I could be a little different. And I thought about Delap, to be honest with you. I thought about him. I thought about Sesko. I thought about Isak, and I actually think this summer is a real opportunity for a lot of clubs around Europe who are looking for a center forward to kind of analyze the market and look at a good option. Because I think all of those guys I just named and a few more are really interesting options. But when I look at United, I was a big critic in the summer that we decided to go for Xerxes and Højlund up front. Not because I think both of them are bad players, but when you look at their age, I think they're both, for lack of a better term, project strikers. And I do think that center forward is the one position that, for the most part, you can't really compromise. You look at most managers that come into big clubs, and they typically tend to bring in a big center forward, whether it was Pep at Bayern Munich with Lewandowski, whether it was Jose with Diego Costa or Didier Drogba. I think center forward, you have to have a guy up there that can consistently, regularly score goals. And you look at United's woes in that aspect. I think Gyökeres, a lot of that's my option, obviously. And Amorim's guy, and I think it's the easy option, but you look at the age, 26 years old, he's ready to contribute now. And then I look at a guy like Højlund, or maybe even a guy like Xerxes. If you believe in them, maybe it's better for them to kind of develop under Gyökeres. There's not as much pressure to be the main guy at Man United week in, week out, because I think people underestimate how difficult a role that is. So I'd go for Gyökeres.
Yeah, so if you were to bring Gyökeres and, say, Omar Mamouche, which United attackers, because some of them would have to go, right, which ones would you be looking to send the other way?
As in, go out?
Yeah.
I think Xerxes, I don't think it's going to be a long-term solution at Man
Giving up
United.
on him already?
Well, here's the thing. You're giving up on him or Højlund, because I think Højlund and Xerxes have 6 months under Amorim to convince him that he's their guy to lead the line. I think they have 6 months, because I'm very convinced if neither of them are able to kind of sell themselves in the next 6 months, he'll go in a different direction. He'll look to bring in a center forward. And when I look at the two of them, they've invested more money into Rasmus Højlund. He's younger. I think while he has his own issues, I think he's more accustomed to the league at this current moment than Joshua Xerxes. And also Xerxes, I think, under Ten Hag maybe had more of a role to play, but when I look at how Amorim's center forward tends to play, runs the channels, big, aggressive, physical, that for me speaks more to Højlund than it does for a Joshua Xerxes. So that's why I would kind of edge towards him.
With any of these signings and anyone that Manchester United sign, the priority has to be that an environment is created at the club in which they can thrive, because you can sign the best names, as they have done over the last few years, but who actually knows what they'll be able to do in Manchester United.
The hope of Ineos is that identity, and that's a big thing if you've listened to Rúben Amorim's recent interview, is that an identity will be there from the start, and it's something that he's really focusing on. And I think from the top to the bottom now at Man United, there should be kind of like an agreement on how the club wants to play, from the top to even the under 15s. So hopefully that's something.
Are there any names that you've been famous on this show for some great shouts? You watch a lot of football abroad as well as over here. Any other shouts that you'd bring to the table, the type of player you think United need to sign?
You might not like this as an answer, but no, because I think I want to just see what Amorim does with the current players. I think it's the mistake Manchester United make, is that they just go to the transfer window to fix their problems every time. Look at what you've got and just try and build a little bit of consistency and cohesion, and maybe don't give up on players because they're not great straight away and they're in a settling-in period. Even this talk now, I mean, I don't think Xerxes had the most unbelievable start, but to give up on him straight away and be like, well, he's on his way out and we'll get someone else in, it's just a revolving door. Just let's take a step back for a second.
I think the one thing I would say to, because I do agree, but I've been pretty consistent with this, and this is going to sound harsh, I genuinely think under Erik ten Hag, we've wasted £600 million. I look throughout the 3 windows that we've had, and it's not even like hindsight saying it. I think even at the time, I was looking at a lot of those signings, like Antony, even with Ugarte. I'm willing to give him some time, of course, but I was a skeptic of the move at the time. I think the big issue here is that we're looking at signings before Ineos and post Ineos. Are those signings that were made before Ineos even in the club's profile at this point? I think that's the question mark here.
Okay. Yeah. There is confirmation of who Lyes has picked as the 5 players Amorim must sign for Manchester United. As always, let us know what you think of that at home.